Hi Fox, how you doing? Today we're gonna start a new series of videos we're gonna call Learning with Morphy, Chess for Beginners. We're going to use the games of the great Paul Morphy, the American chess star down in the 19th century, to learn some basic strategies and basic rules of chess for all those who already know how to move the pieces, or they know already all the rules but want to learn some basic strategies, how to play in the opening, and some basics about tactics, etc. So as we'll see, as I said, we're going to use games of Paul Morphy. He was born in New Orleans in 1837 in the 19th century. His mother was French. His father had Irish and Spanish roots, and the chess was very typical in his family. Almost everybody could play it. And at the age of 12 he was already one of the finest players in the town in New Orleans. So at the age of 20, when he already finished his studies in the university, he had to wait 1 year so he could work as a lawyer. So he took advantage of that fact and went to Europe for that year. And well, in his trip, he traveled through all Europe, defeating almost all of the strongest European masters. And well, after some years, he had some mental problems, and finally he died in 1884. He's considered one of the first non-official world champions, and certainly he was probably the best on his times. Very strong player. The first game we're gonna see is part of a kind of a match he played with his brother Alonzo Morphy in New Orleans in 1848. His brother was also a strong player for that time, taking into account that there were no books, there were no trainers, there was not so much information available on chess like today. So they played a match. His brother was quite strong, but as we will see, Paul was already much stronger than him and was understanding chess much deeper. So Paul was had white pieces here. He played e4. Very basic move, controlling the central, as we will see with this green color. There are four basic squares in the center, which we always try to control as much as possible. Now this pawn is controlling directly this d5 square and f5 square. Black replies e5, and in this way both players are ready to develop their pieces, some of them at least. This light squared bishop could go to c4 or to b5 to attack this enemy's camp, and this knight will go probably to f3, where it will be controlling some nice central squares, and black will be able to do the same. Now bishop c4, very normal move, developing a piece, controlling central d5 square, and also targeting this f7 pawn, the enemy's camp. This f7 and f2 for white are the weakest pawns, the weakest squares in the opening, so it is very important to place some aggressive pieces here, targeting these pawns in case the opponent is careless, and we can attack black king immediately. So here some normal moves would be knight c6, defending the pawn on e5, controlling some center square, also knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, or even bishop c5, just trying to do the same as white does. Here black played f5, not a very good move in these positions, and the biggest con of this move is that it weakens this important diagonal, which is weakening the black king a lot. Now eventually white could check with the white king on h5, and this light square diagonal along with this other from c4 to f7 are very weak. This is certainly challenging the central pawn of white, but it is not that great to weaken your king this way. So here Paul went on to take that pawn, although he could have even defended it with something like d3, or even play in a much more promising style, much more aggressive style, just sacrificing this pawn. For instance, he could play knight f3, just ignoring that, because if black takes that pawn, now he can take the e5 pawn, and now he would be attacking the f5 f7 square with both the bishop and the knight. And after something like d5, cutting that attack, attacking the bishop and having this pawn protected with the queen, it seems black has solved its problems. But don't you forget that this diagonal is already very weak, and white is going to take advantage of that. So now queen h5 check, g6 is the only move not to move the king, but unfortunately for black it fails into a very typical motive here, a tactic which is very typical in these lines where either white or black open their this diagonal against their king. Now the knight takes on g6, and if black recaptures, white queen takes the rook on h8 and is probably already winning here. But anyway, Paul didn't went for any of this. He went on to take that pawn. Now black continued to play knight f6. At last we see a good move for black. He controls some central squares, very important, developing pieces. Knight c3, doing more or less the same, controlling the same squares. And now d5. Now it seems this pawn is attacking the bishop, is chasing it, putting it back, because it is defended by the knight and the queen. But at the same time it's attacked by the bishop and the knight. But white is able to already sacrifice some material here to get lots of advantage, thanks to the fact that he has that black king is already weak, and he has this pawn here which is protecting these important squares. Okay, so he goes ahead and takes that pawn with the knight. Now black saw the threat, saw the danger, and he hurries up to develop pieces and try to get castled. He plays bishop c5. What would happen had he taken with the knight? Okay, so instead of bishop c5, let's say he takes with the knight. We have a very similar variation to one we just saw. Queen h5 check. Now g6, f takes. Now if white doesn't take, black doesn't take on g6, white is threatening to play g7, discover check, take that rook and promote another queen, clearly winning the game. So if he takes, white once again takes the rook. Very typical tactical theme in these kind of positions. But anyway, Alonso here played bishop c5. Paul took on f6, check. Queen takes f6. Now he plays d3. A good move which defends the bishop, controls this central square, and opens this diagonal for the for the dark squared bishop to be developed. Now black takes one of the two pawns he was down on the material back on f5 with the bishop. Knight f3, important move, just developing piece, getting ready to castle. And now black takes his time to pin this knight. Now if the knight moves, the bishop will take the queen, so the knight is temporarily paralyzed there. Not something very pleasant to be pinned. But here Morphy plays a natural move, bishop d5, controlling this knight on f3 and attacking the weak pawn on b7. There were also possibilities of playing something like castle, because white wouldn't mind if some exchange happen here, and although his pawns are not very good here, there are three islands of pawns. As we see, it is not very good usually, because you want to have all your pawns as much as connected as possible, because this could be very weak pawns in the future. But he is up a pawn. He has more development than black has, and he is certainly not worse here. But anyway, he went for bishop d5, another natural move. Now c6, protecting this b7 pawn. Now it is not longer possible to take it, and attacking the bishop. the bishop goes back to e4 and places himself in a very in an excellent square, because it's controlling two important diagonals, lots of important squares. As well, all players should probably always try to put all their pieces in the center, because in this way they are controlling lots of squares, lots of places. Knight d7, developing a piece. Black must hurry up to develop. White castles, puts in his king out of the center. And now h6, probably to stop white from playing the bishop to g5, as it would be attacking the queen and probably would put black into some problems. The point is, the disadvantage of this move is that it will let this g6 square very weak. It means that no pawn can no longer protect this square, and if white eventually can put a piece here, either a bishop or a knight, it would be attacking lots of important squares for black. It would be attacking black king, and no pawn could erase the piece from there. Now c3, another interesting move, supporting the possible b4 advance to erase this bishop, which is excellently placed, controlling already this central pawn square on d4, and already and even controlling this b4 square, which is also important. Black castles long. It seems his king is now safer, not in the center, but white is ready to try to start an attack on this queen side, as he has plenty of development. His king is safe, the center is under more or less control, his bishop is excellently placed here, so he goes ahead with b4, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to b6, and now a4, trying to develop lots of initiative here with this pawn against the place where the king is placed. a6, trying to make a room for the bishop. Now queen b3, just developing another piece, putting the queen on this place, on this b file, where it could be potentially targeting the bishop on b6, the pawn on b7, potentially x-raying. And don't you forget that this king is already here, and it could be very dangerous. Now black decides to take on f3 to try to, well, create something here. Something like queen e6, trying to exchange queens, probably was better, because if you're getting attacked, it is one of the main tactics, when my main strategies to defend is to try to exchange the attacking pieces of your opponent. So some exchanging here would probably benefit black, as white wouldn't have that much pieces left to attack the black king. So queen takes, bishop takes, probably bishop e3, developing pieces, but anyway, white is better here. He's up a pawn, he's got a very solid pawn structure. Black has this weak pawn on e5, it cannot be defended with another pawn, so white is still better, but probably not that good, as he has a queen there attacking the black king. So anyway, black decides to take on f3, white takes with the bishop, and now g5. Black is trying to counterattack on this side of the board. Bishop a3, developing the last piece white had there, and here black plays g4. Just if he takes on e3, f takes e3, now this rook is attacking not directly, but x-raying the queen on f6, and if this bishop moves in a very interesting way, it could be a discard attack with some nasty threats to the black queen, sorry. So black goes ahead to play g4, sacrificing this pawn, as it is not protected, to try to create some counterplay. White takes, now bishop c7, bringing this bishop in a potential good diagonal to attack the white king. Bishop goes back to f3, now rook hg8. White must certainly be careful not to fall into some kind of tricks and tactics, because black already has some pieces targeting his king. Just this bishop is in a potential good diagonal. When this pawn is moved, the queen is already well placed. the rook is in a very nice open file, so white must be not that careless. And here Paul plays a very strong move, bishop e4, just stopping this pawn from moving, because it would, as we saw, open this diagonal for the bishop. The dark square bishop would be free now to attack the white king. So he goes ahead with bishop e4. Very interesting move. Now, as we saw, this pawn is isolated. There is no other pawn on the on the d and f file, so it cannot be harassed by a pawn, as you can see. Here rook g4, attacking the bishop, but also trying probably to double rooks on the file and try to attack white king. f3, attacking the rook right away, also giving extra protection to this e4 bishop. Rook goes back to g7, and white continues his attack on the black king. b5, trying to open some lines because he has some interesting pieces here ready to attack black king. a takes. Now knight goes to b6, probably to stop white from checking here on a8 and creating some problems. Now unfortunately white is on time to take on c6, and now he's attacking with two pieces, the knight on b6, which is only protected by the bishop. Now rook dg8, threatening to take on g2 with check. If he had played b takes c6, as we saw, this knight would be hanging. Had he taken with the queen, the bishop could take the queen, so it was not possible. So now black's position is already almost desperate, so he tries to create some direct threats on white king, attacking on g2 with both rooks. Rook f2, just protecting it and also getting ready to bring the rook to the queen side to attack the black king. Queen d8, protecting the knight on b6. Now rook a8 check. Already while black is in lots of trouble, as his king is very weak. Note that he cannot go to d7. The squares he has to move are very restricted. So here bishop b8 was played. Note that if knight takes on a8, queen takes on b7, and it is checkmate, and so the black king cannot move anywhere. So bishop b8, protecting from the check for the time being. And now white takes on b6. Just the knight now was hanging, and the bishop is now attacking the black queen on d8. Another very interesting line, in fact leading to a checkmate, was this one, queen e6 check. Now king c7, no other move, because if while black places another piece here, it will be just taken with the pawn. So king c7. Now bishop takes b6 check, very spectacular, bringing the king to the center. Rook b2 check. Note that all white pieces are participating in the attack. King c5. Obviously, if king c7, there is a mate in one move, taking with the rook on b7. So after this, king c5. Now rook a5 check. You might say, well, the black queen can take it. Well, he can, but the problem is that after this, queen d5 is checkmate, because the black queen is not protecting this d5 square anymore, so it is a checkmate on d5. Very beautiful, sacrificing lots of material to checkmate the black king in the center. But anyway, bishop takes b6 wins as well, because now white is up 3 pawns and a piece. And something which is probably more important, black king is very weak here. Here black took on g2 with check, although white was protecting that pawn, so some exchanges here. Queen g5 check, trying to give him some perpetual check. King h1, queen c1 check, but after bishop g1, black resigned here, as there are no more checks. and white is simply up a rook, a bishop, and 2 pawns, which is overwhelming material advantage to win the game very easily. So this is the first game we are going to see from Paul Morphy. I have to be posting lots of more and hope you will like them and learn with one of the greatest chess player we had in the United States throughout the history.